One.
Hello, everyone. This is Baruti Carl Alexander, and this is the 170th episode of the Sourceseeker Hour, a very prominent discussion panel where we talk about everything, anything that's going on. And one of the big issues now is what the new president or the old president or that president, however you want to frame it, is doing today. And I have an esteemed panel with me to have this discussion of DEI and its effects for the Black community. Some see it as a positive thing, some see it as a negative thing. But we're going to discuss that from all different variables and perspectives. And I'm very excited to have each of you guests with me today. And I thank you very much for joining us. And I want to start our discussion with my brother, Warren Houston, the people's lawyer. And so just generally say how you feel about the first 50 days of the Trump presidency. How do you feel about that?
Well, first of all, brother, thank you for inviting me on my show. It's always a pleasure to be on your show and speak with you about political issues or issues in the community. I myself am excited about what has taken place since the new administration has taken office. This country was going to hell quick, fast, and in a handbasket very quickly. And so that we see the turnaround with that already. As things will be going, as things are turning back to normal. So I'm excited about it.
Let me interject. Please introduce yourself as you giving your introductory statement.
Well, again, as you stated, I'm Warren Houston. I am the founder of the People's Law Study Group. We created an organization back in 2011 where we assisted in the community as we taught the community at large. We had a lot of classes going on with the Shrine of the Black Madonna, educating our people in the community about the judicial system and how it works. And what prompted this is when I got my law degree, because I was under the impression, as most people, that things are so racially slurred and we have so much against us against race. But when I got my law degree, I found out that race, whether it plays a factor or not, was not the main reason that we were having the problems that we're having in the judicial system. The main problems that we're having in the judicial system has to do with ignorance and illiteracy. And a Supreme Court justice, I can't remember which one, said that. He said 90% of people that are in prison due to their own ignorance. So this is why the People's Law Study Group was created.
Understood. Well, thank you for that introduction. I got somebody else coming in. Brother Thomas Graham, please introduce yourself and give your opening statement, brother.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Graham. I've been an educator for going on 25 years now. I have the pleasure of serving as a teacher, coach, assistant principal, associate principal, building principal, and I've also worked in the district capacity as well for 2 different districts. Currently, I'm serving in HISD and looking at a lot of those different situations that actually lead to that prison, school to prison pipeline. So it's interesting to kind of hear some different opinions. I have a different opinion about where we are right now and where we stand within the first 50 days of this presidency. But I'm looking forward to just having a conversation about that and exchanging ideas.
Thank you, brother. Hey, brother Sedric, how you doing?
Peace. How you doing, family? What's going
brother.
on, man?
Been a long time. I'm glad
Yes,
you
sir.
were able
Yes,
to
sir.
join us.
Hey,
Glad to
y'all
talk
looking
to
so
you.
good.
You're so
Y'all-
vibrant and
Yes, sir.
powerful. I had
Yes,
to have
sir.
you on this conversation.
That's a
My brother.
surprise.
Yes,
Hey.
sir. What's going on, brother Warren?
What's going on, man?
I got to button up my shirt, man, because you brothers looking so good and so smooth. You know what I'm saying? So I'm honored and privileged and pleasured to be in the company of such an esteemed and wonderful panel of good brothers that are doing great work in the community. I tip my hat to you, and I thank you for all you do.
Hey, brother, give an introductory statement of who you are and tell us how you see the first 50 days of what's going on with the Trump administration.
I'm just a hardworking brother striving to get better. and hopefully to provide some information and support to our community, which is what we need more than really anything other than unity. So, we're just striving to do our work, whether that be on the radio, KPFT 90.1, or, on Facebook at Conscious Mindset. We're just really striving to elevate the consciousness and awareness of our community. And regardless of where you stand on the aisle, the last 50 days have been days of transformation. And unfortunately, an immense amount of confusion. We've seen almost as many plane crashes and plane traumatic incidences than all of last year, and the years before, if I may be honest. And that's just one example of how we have an administration that is hell bent on destruction, destroying what we know of the federal government, destroying what we know even today, as we have at the backdrop of this conversation, the Department of Education. Are you serious? And I know people are going to say that it's not functioning, it's not running at an optimal level. But what they don't understand and what they don't realize is the capacity and the enormous response that that entity has, and the need in terms of Pell Grants, in terms of how many of us were able to go to school. I'm a beneficiary of those individual entities and those immense and important governmental institutions that are being gutted without any form of reputable solutions or options that will benefit our community in particular and especially. So, I think that we need to have more discourse and conversations like this to discuss not only the hype that we see on social media, but dig into the weeds and the details, because that's where the devil exists. That's what most people say. And the details that are critical and key for us to understand if this is really going to be something that benefits us specifically. And the us that I'm referring to are folk that look like you and me and the working class. And last thing I'll say, and I think it's most important, is when we look at good brother, Representative Al Green, standing up, having his constitutional right of protest, and now he's being censured. And 10 Democrats agreed with the Republicans. And I say, he didn't bust out and say, "You lie." He didn't do that. He just stood up for his constituents who potentially could lose Medicaid. And we know folk that on Medicaid need that for their health care. They need that for so many aspects of their existence. So I applaud him. I salute him. I tip my cap to him. And I'm thankful that he's not only doing that in the hallowed halls of Congress, but he's putting where the rubber meets the road and doing the work in the communities to ensure that the least of ours are protected with the most benefits possible.
Well, thank you, brother. That's Brother Sedric Keeler for those of us on Facebook and watching this episode right here. Thank you, brother. Brother Dr. Cleo, same introduction, share who you are, and the first 50 days.
And good evening, brothers. Glad to be on here in such a space where brothers can have such great discourse. So it's an honor to be here today. My name is Dr. Cleo Wadley. I'm a 30-year veteran of K-12 schools. Started off as a teacher, became a principal for 15 years at every level, elementary, junior, and high school. Currently, I'm a central office administrator. My research is specifically targets and looks at Black males in K-12 schools and the hegemonic discourses that surround them, and how we can break down those discourses to be able to break down the barriers in K-12 schools to ensure that Black males can flourish in those schools and become, instead of being the anti-citizens that they are now, but becoming productive members of society by flourishing. I have an education consulting business where I specifically work and help with schools, parents, and communities with developing ways to develop Black males so they can be academically successful. Speaking on the Trump administration for the first 50 days, really what we see here is a culmination of what he said he was going to do. there's a movement in the country right now that's about white grievance. You know, white Americans looked at the changing demographics of this country and seeing where it's going, and they are willing to put democracy at stake in order to make sure they don't lose power as a majority or a soon to be minority group inside the United States. So what we see is white grievance politics at its finest and best right now. And they're removing those things that have, they're trying to basically move this country back to a pre-civil rights era, where a time where rights were restricted for people of color, access and opportunity to thrive and be successful. So we see basically a reversion going on right now. And that's through white grievance and white grievance politics happening right now. And it's most unfortunate and it's regrettable that white America has decided to abandon democracy in favor of protecting itself.
Okay. I want to talk about and start about the conversation of DEI. Let's go back in history. I always give this example. When Budweiser started, I think it was 1856. They started the Anheuser-Busch family. They were able to put together that. Where were Black people at in 1856? We were still in slavery. So they were able to start to build up a business that has become a worldwide business today, where we didn't have that opportunity as Black folks. So we were put behind the 8 ball in the beginning. And DEI, affirmative action, has tried to, in some ways, address that. Now, some would say that, okay, you all had enough time to address that, and you had enough time to make up the pace. So now everything is even, and everybody should be on their own merit. So that is the discussion that we are basically having. Have we had enough opportunity, and should it just be wiped away, all of that advantage that was built up? Did we have enough opportunity? Brother Warren, you want to start that discussion?
The first thing I would say about that is, first of all, what man judges himself by another man? History has taken place. There's nothing that we can do about history, whether it's right or wrong. It's in history books. We live in a capitalistic society, which I happen to enjoy. One thing about capitalists is that you have the opportunity to capitalize on somebody else's ignorance or somebody else's illiteracy, and that's not a bad thing. What do I mean by that? I'm not a mechanic. You would never see me under anybody's cars with a wrench and a screwdriver. You won't see me because that's not what I do. But when my car breaks down, I have no problem paying a mechanic to fix my car. So not only is this a capitalist society in that sense, it's also a place where you have the mind to be a creative thinker and a creative genius. If we keep measuring ourselves by somebody else's stick or standard as to what happened, we will forever and never get anywhere, because we keep looking and we keep pointing the finger. And as a man thinketh, so it is with him. And this is the problem that we have. We're really seeing the world as it is, or we're seeing it through our faulty, smoked up lenses, because we're the only people who can't seem to let anything go. This whole world, I don't care what race, whatever you come from, has been in some form of slavery at some form of time in human history. But we're the only ones that keep harping on it. Matter of fact, we've been used as a political football by the Democratic Party. I heard the brother talk about democracy, but the United States has never been a democracy. This is something that has been kicked off and people have been running off with it. We have been what's called a democratic republic. And as brother said, if we go back and we get off into the details of things, then we begin to understand stuff a little better. But we as a people, we have been used by political football because our emotions. Anybody can tell us anything, we take it and we run with it. DEI does not benefit us anyway. We're on the last end of the totem pole as it represents DEI. The number one benefactor of DEI is white women. And so I don't understand the things that we do, or do we even understand the things that we do? This is according to the United States Department of Labor. White women are the number one benefactors of DEI. Then you have Latinos and Hispanics. You have Asians, Native Americans, people with disabilities, veterans, LGBT, whatever the letters are. And then last but not least, African Americans. So why are we fighting a war, especially targeting Target who says, well, we don't want to play the DEI game. DEI says, well, because of some federal mandate, we have to put people in position or whatever based on, not based on merit, but based on we have to have this many blacks, this many whites to try to make things even. Something is wrong with it. Nothing in life is equal. We're trying to equal stuff out. Nothing is equal. Because of this blackout thing on February 28th, Target lost $12.4 billion at a share rate of what, $27.20 per share. And the things that scare me about that is we're fighting a war that has nothing to do with us, that we don't benefit from. And Target, even though they say, well, we're not going to be a benefactor of DEI, what merchant have their main products in Target? African Americans and black folks.
Okay. Brother Graham, what's your comment on that?
I had some stuff going on in the background, so I didn't want to have that come up. Brother Warren, Houston said some things that I can't find agreement with. However, there are a number of things that I do find disagreement with. The foremost things that I find agreement with him on is the level of proficiency and the level that Black folks as a general benefit from DEI in terms of that structure. I have no disagreement with that. I think white women are the primary factors that have a benefit from that. Now, where I find the disagreement with him is in the context that what happened before has no realization on what's happening now. And true enough, yes, this is a capitalistic republic, but it's also a republic that has aspects of socialism that we've always had, because we have to be one people that help one another. But when we are moving more so to a society that's ruled by oligarchs, and we have individuals who are only pushing more for the wealthy of individuals, the most wealthy, none of us fit within that category, and none of the people that we love fit within that category. Of course, we want to one day be that way, but there's a lot of things that took place in the history and in the past that also affect where we are right now. And ignoring those things doesn't allow you to have a clear understanding of the picture that we're seeing right now in everything from our schools, which I've been blessed enough to work in, until the areas that Brother Houston was talking about. To completely dismiss that, I think would be foolish. However, there's something that we can't rely on to say that it is the laurels that we have to just focus on and say, oh, woe is me. I do agree with him. We have to understand what's been done, but not repeat that process. However, when you choose to forget those things and just say, hey, you know what, that was in the past, let it go, you're not taking account for how those things in the past truly affect where we are right now. There's a great book, and Brother Houston is a lawyer, so he might be familiar with this text. It's by a guy named Rothstein. It's called The Color of Law. And in The Color of Law, he paints a picture. He talks about how a lot of different aspects, talks a lot about Houston as well, a lot of different aspects that happen because of segregated areas that are now impacting today in terms of wealth, income, wealth generation. We all understand that in America, one of the biggest ways for the median household to build wealth is through real estate home ownership. And that was something that was completely taken away from a lot of Black people in Houston area and throughout this country. And when we look at where we are in that wealth discrepancy right now, true indeed, there are some bad spending habits amongst our people. Bad. So I'm not going to sit here and try to condone that. But we also can't sit and say some of these things did not have a factor on where we are right now. So where I, again, agree with Brother Houston is the fact that, hey, yes, we have to go ahead and focus on our self-reliance a lot of times. And what we also have to understand is that DEI is something that does not benefit us at the top. But where I disagree with him is in the fact that it's something that should be taken away and something that we should not let people know, hey, this is something that impacts our community, even though we might be on the bottom rung, something that impacts our community. We have always been at the forefront of fighting for the soul of this country, and others have always benefited from that. Hopefully, we can get to a point where we continue to work more as a people and as come together more as a people so that we can benefit more as a people. But to completely dismay and disagree, or excuse me, dismay and just wipe away what progress we have seen in DEI and all of those different aspects is something I completely disagree with.
Okay, I just want to say, if you go back in history, there was a time when education was outlawed, and education, as we know, is a role model for how you can grow and learn, and how much they attacked it, as well as they attacked anything that you tried to do. That affects us through generations. Psychologists say it still affects us today. But yes, we have to work to move away from that. Brother Sedric, what is your comment on that introductory statement?
Just really quickly, I'll say, I think that DEI has been totally taken over by those who want to purport a sense of Nazi-like agenda. And what I mean specifically is they want to typecast Black and brown folk as being the main recipients of it, or this wokeism that they coined, and then made it into something that's derogatory, when really it's just about awareness and raising consciousness, which is something we should all strive to do, because according to LinkedIn, when you have a diverse team of thinkers, 87% of the time the decisions are better and the cash flow increases in the corporation. And we know DEI is an $8 billion annual entity that they want to wipe out. But one of the things that I wanted to share, and my analysis and my understanding of it, it includes belonging, inclusion, representation, and systemic change. And the four things that I saw coming up constantly and consistently was the 4 C's: career, connection, community, and capital. Those are all things that we as African Americans especially need to be a part of, and need to have a sustainable and a substance from the government to subsidize. And what that simply means and what that simply entails is that we need the support of entities that can make sure the game and the playing field is a little fair. A little more fair, a little more equitable, and a little more equal. I know Brother Warren mentioned a great analogy of a mechanic. He's not a mechanic. And I agree with that. We do want to rely on the expertise of those who are in positions of authority, but it should be equitable and it should be fair, because what we've seen since 2020 to 2022, we saw a rise in Black executives by 27%, according to USA Today analysis. And we've seen that over the course of this backlash of DEI, those numbers have fallen by 3% in a little over a year. And it's going to fall even more with the actions of Trump. And one of the things that I wanted to say that hasn't been said today, and I think it's important to say, is that of all the CEOs in this country, only 6% are non-white. And what we have to understand is white men have benefited greatly from DEI. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. When you look at many of the contracts out of that $8 billion that have been bestowed upon DEI-like initiatives, many of them, such as McKinsey and other law firms and consulting firms, have received them, and they are predominantly and dominantly white. And when we look at legacy admissions, which no one talks about, which no one even discusses, legacy admissions greatly benefit white men. And one of the things that research has been done and shown by Harvard Business Law is that 70% of CEOs select someone that looks just like them. And that's why today, despite the recent gains of DEI, it says that Black Americans are outnumbered 12 to one by white people in executive positions. One of the things that I wanted to say, and I'll close with this, and I think it's important and apropos for us to think about, is that these initiatives have been smokescreens and tokenism rather than real diversity, rather than real inclusion, rather than true representation, rather than the systemic change. So by creating these things and then lambasting them and then putting them out and saying that doesn't work, it shows reverse racism and reverse discrimination, rather than looking at the root of a system that is inequitable, that is unfair, that has mechanics that not only are shade tree because they don't know much, but they are hustling us and selling us vehicles that are lemons, that are meant to break down, that we cannot drive to what we would call the road to prosperity and success. And I'll say this and I'll close. And I think it's very important for us to think about this. Affirmative action has been attacked and decimated since the civil rights period. And we see DEI has been utterly gutted and destroyed. And one of the things that we're noticing now is there is a strong contingency and resurgence to decimate all of the vehicles and channels that gave the few Black folk that were able to get through the cracks, such as Sheila Jackson Lee and Sylvester Turner, God rest their souls. Those vestiges and vehicles and channels are being decimated. And even though we may say we live in somewhat of meritocracy, or that is the desire, what we're seeing more is a mirrorocracy, which is a coin term. And I'll go into it later into specifics. But those who look like the dominant culture are being chosen, and those who do not act and look and think like the dominant culture are being left out in the cold.
I just want to say, in reference to what you're talking about, if you look at something like the NFL, 70% of the players are Black, but it's still a streamlined coaching role for the Black coaches, even though we have seen that they are capable, but they don't get that second chance. Like they recycle the white coaches so much, but they don't get that second and third chance like the white coaches. But in that area, that is showing how it is in the corporate area, even more so, because they want to have somebody who looks like them, as you mentioned. So that's what we're dealing with in a lot of ways. Brother Dr. Cleo, what do you say about that?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is that we technically live in a democratic republic. However, ideologically, this country is a democracy. That's the first point I want to make. Second of all, is that right now this country is in a battle between two phases, right? Or two states of mind. One is a country that is founded for white people by white people, that with unearned benefits, right? And another is America that is inclusive, diverse, and believes in access and equal opportunity for everyone here. And those two ideologies are at war right now. And as a result of that, we see this backlash we're talking about is the white grievance and those who want America to return to a pre-civil rights era is actively putting in laws and policies to take away those structures which have protected or made the democracy at least livable, where Black people can survive. It's not perfect, of course, but at least it's a place where we can at least survive and have opportunity to grow and thrive. They're trying to reverse those things to take us back to an era where not only were we marginalized, but also oppressed and also denied equal access to the society. And people get the word equity confused. I hear that. I think that's an intentional strategy by the right to use words like equity and say, oh, everybody can't be equal. If I'm 5'5", I can't play in the NBA. That would mean that's equal. That's not what equity is about. Equity is about making sure everyone has access and opportunity. It doesn't mean you give people something equal so they can have something that someone else has, so everybody can have the same thing. That is not what equity means. And the right's very good at taking words and phrases and twisting them around to be something negative. For example, like critical race theory. That was hijacked. Woke, like the brother was talking about earlier. Woke is about awareness and conscience. It's not negative, but it's been hijacked to mean something negative in common discourse. So I think we have to be real mindful about the strategies that the fascists on the right use to be able to keep people blind and also ignorant to the direction this country, which I think when it's its best self, can really be and where it should be, which I think it will be one day. Because I definitely do believe in the idea that the vision that Dr. King had for this country of being a place that's diverse and equitable for all can exist once some systemic barriers that he talked about, those things of militarism, racism, and poverty are eliminated. And with with a focus on DEI, I believe that that can be done in our lifetimes.
Well, I'm gonna just say I'm not sure that it'll ever be eliminated. It can be modified because human beings are human beings. And as you were saying, the two worlds are competing against one another. That kind of always be true because they are always going to fight for their way of life, which is white supremacy. Because let's face it, everybody wants to be in power, in charge. Now, we as Black folks, we have something in our soul that is much more, I say, tolerant and acceptable and want to get along more so than maybe that other race. That's just an observation. But let me ask Brother Warren. Brother Warren, can't both things be true? That DEI, it can have some good elements, but then it's time for us to live in self-reliance. Can both of those things be true?
Yeah, from a true perspective, but we really have a true perspective of what we're looking at. A coin always has two sides. And one thing about having a coin with two sides, as I say, opposing side, one can look at a glass that's half full, one can say it's half full, and the other can say it's half empty. So you have an argument all day. So it basically relates back to your thinking. Okay, so when a lot of times people hear me talk, they think I have never said slavery didn't exist. I've never said things that have happened to people of color that shouldn't happen. That's not the thing that has my focus. Booker T. Washington made a quote. One of my favorite, well, it's two quotes I might mention. I'm pretty sure Brother Baruti, you've heard me talk about these quotes. And one quote that Booker T said, he said, there is another class of colored people who make a business of keeping the troubles, the wrongs, and the hardships of the Negro race before the public. Having learned that they are able to make a living out of their troubles, they have grown into the settled habit of advertising their wrongs, partly because they want sympathy and partly because it pays. Some of these people do not want the Negro to lose his grievance because they do not want to lose their jobs. Now, you just mentioned the term yourself, Brother Baruti, white supremacy. You know who coined that term? Black folks. White folks never coined the term white supremacy. That's something that was coined by Black folks. So evidently, he's a problem in your mindset that you put him on a pedestal. He's never been a problem in my mindset. So evidently, he's been a problem in your mindset that we have to call racism, white supremacy. I can't think of my brother's name, Powernomics. He said something that stuck with me years ago.
Claude Anderson.
Claude Anderson. Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother Sid. Claude Anderson said this. He said, it is absolutely criminal for us to raise up our children and then send them over into white folks' neighborhood, wanting them to get jobs in white folks' neighborhood that these people have created for their own children. So we're too busy fighting among ourselves instead of creating and worrying about, we talk more about the white man than the white man even think about us. But this is our focus, the white man, racism. We walk around like some kind of deranged lunatic. And we are not focused on ourselves. So while things may have two sides to the coin, if we're looking at the coin, are they equal in weight when we look at what we're talking about?
I just want to say real quick, I think what you're saying is true, but both things are true. We have to respect what we've been through and protest against that. But as Booker T. Washington said, hey, I'm going to build mine. Now, W.E. Boyce said, yes, I want the talented 10. I want to be have the highest aspirations in my mind. But at the same time, don't spend all your time worrying about what the white man is doing. Yes, spend it in your own community. Now, our problem is we do have self-niggerization because because of what was done to us, we don't believe in ourselves. We don't believe in ourselves. And we think our ice is not as cold as the white man's ice. That's just in our psychology. So that is what we got to fight against. We got to overcome that. And that's our issue. But we can't discount what else happened also.
Again, Brother Brew, let me interject.
Go ahead.
I've never said to never forget. I said look at it from a right angle. You just mentioned two men, Booker T. Washington and W.B. Du Bois. Now let's look at both of them life. If I tell anybody, if anybody had a right to be mad at a white man, it should have been Booker T. Washington. He should have been angry at the white man. If you go back and read his life story, if you go back and read the book Up From Slavery, this man walked miles and miles to school with holes in his shoes, but he was determined. He didn't let the thing of his day deflect him so much that he didn't do. Booker T. Washington is dead today. He has a university in Alabama that's steady growing, steady educating people, and people will turn around and call this man a coon today because of the Atlanta Compromise speech. Let's look at W.B. Du Bois. W.B. Du Bois grew up privileged. He grew up very privileged. But he takes the attitude that most of us take sometimes. You want to get people out there running for office who are not even qualified and put them in positions. Booker T. Washington was like this, man, let me teach you a trade. Let me teach you how to take care of yourself. Don't even worry about the white man and trying to be equal with him, because right now you're not equal with him. Let me get you to where you can stand on your own 2 feet. And we're still doing the same thing today. Now, what legacy or what school do W.B. Du Bois have today? Not one.
Brother Warren, I want to interject this. You know the story of Booker T also, that behind the scenes, he was supporting black protests. He was
behind the scenes, right. Exactly.
So he was one of those who was fighting very quietly, as well as W.E. Bois. He said, okay, I wish I had allowed and work with Marcus Garvey. He understood he had some regrets. So what I'm saying, we have to have both sides and not fight, because they fought against one another. Booker T was against, well, Marcus Garvey and W.E.B. Du Bois were against each other. And if we don't do that, if we work together, if Farrakhan works with Jesse Jackson, if Barack Obama works with Al Sharpton, we can have a better possibility.
But how can two walk together except they agree? And this is the point I'm trying to make.
You don't have to agree.
No. Listen what I'm saying, Brother Rudy.
Work together. You don't have to totally agree.
Okay, let me say this. Let me put it this way. And maybe I can simplify it this way. There is a book called, I'll come back to it. I got to get it. But anyway, if you go back into the history of this country, and it's so funny how stuff has switched around. The Republican Party was created in 1854. What was it created for? For the abolishment of slavery. The Civil War, all this took place because of the Republican Party created to abolish slavery. The first people that were in politics were black people that were in politics were Republicans. Now the Civil Rights Act come along, and some kind of way we switched on the other side. And black folks have all become Democrats. The people that was a party of the KKK, the people that never wanted black folks to succeed in this country, and all of a sudden Republicans have been a racist white people in this country. And I'm so confused as to how that happened, because, the party switched. But if you go back and do the history, there was no switching of the parties. Only thing has happened is the Democrats have become better skilled at their communist and Marxist ways, and they have used black folks as a political football to try to destroy this place. And we sit up and say, well, white folks, are they trying to help? No, there should be a standard. When you come in my house, there is a standard. I don't just let anybody walk in my house off the street and you can do. People was treating this country like trash, and everybody was like cheering for it. I'm like, when did we get to the point to where, people can come over here? They don't have to come over. I mean, about a million people can come in here. We were mutilating children, and people are agreeing to this. And because people that stand up against this, all of a sudden, they're trying to bring in white supremacy. No, there has to be standard, and the standard needs to be in order to grow. This is common sense. It's not anything about white or black.
I agree with there have to be standards. That's why I never said Bill Cosby, we should just fight for him, even though he did such and such a thing. Kanye, if he does such and such a thing, just because they black, I'm not going to necessarily go along with him. But that doesn't mean, hey, I may not have more forgiveness in my heart for what they did. Brother Thomas, I want to bring you in, and you see all that we talking about. What is the best way forward in this new reality?
There's a lot of things that we have to take into consideration, and there's a lot of things that need to be addressed, especially like some of the things that were mentioned. When we start talking about the Republican Party, and I know there was one thing that Brother Houston had mentioned, the Republican Party, as we know it now, is really a reflection of Southern Dixiecrats from the 1960s. Then when Johnson said he signed that civil rights bill, and a lot of Southern Dixiecrats just did not like that. And they then kind of flipped over to that Republican Party. And we've seen that influx of that Republican Party who has been against a lot of things that benefit Black folks in general. One of the preeminent architects of that, at least in my lifetime, was Ronald Reagan. And seeing a lot of the things that Reagan did, although I was a child when Reagan was president, I didn't understand the magnitude and the effects that a lot of his policies had on Black folks, people of color, even just working class in general. The case in point, just looking at a lot of those after school type programs, a lot of those programs that would fit into the communities to help students that were just completely decimated while still providing tax incentives and tax reductions for those who were in the highest tier of our economic breakdown in the country. Those things disproportionately hurt Black folks when we look at those items. So that's just one aspect of seeing where we are right now. When we look at a Republican Party right now, a Republican Party as I understand it. So I want to be very clear about this. I am not a fan of the Democrat Party either, because I think a lot of the things that Brother Houston said about the Democratic Party is absolutely correct. I think they do put a lot of issues in the forefront that are based on feelings and based on aspects that don't really move the needle in terms of what we really need to do. So I'm not disagreeing with that. And I think that's why they really, lost the election. Even though I voted on their side, I think overall that's why they lost the election this time, because of focusing on items that the average everyday American, be they Black or white or Hispanic, don't really care about. Really care more about, what's in my pocketbook and how I can go and take care of these things. However, the Republicans that then capitalized off of those items that they were pushing forward in the aspect where they really shouldn't, are still the ones who are trying to take away those aspects that are most beneficial to us. If we look at the Department of Education, talking about the abolishment of the Department of Education, prior to the development of the Department of Education, when we had individuals who were special ed, individuals who had a certain particular needs, campuses could just say, you're gone, just go. And there was no recourse that they truly had for that outside of maybe some lobbying with a particular individual. With the Department of Education, you actually have a department that they can then mandate that and watch those particular aspects. True indeed, it needs to be adjusted. It does need to have some level of refinement to it. But that's one of those situations where you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You go ahead and you continue to work on those things. The other aspect of this that we're kind of looking at right now, how Abbott and Ken Paxton are trying to push this use of federal vouchers. So these are the same people who are saying that, you can't have abortions, and, a woman doesn't have a right to choose. And, we want to get these people off these things, but they're taking away the very mechanisms that are there to help support people who may not have that traditional structure, who may not have the income to do these particular aspects. And when you start looking at the school vouchers, that they want to actually take money from public schools to then give to private schools, for school vouchers, number one, there's not enough private schools in this state to supply the needs of all of the students who might want to attend them. Number two, the individuals for these private schools who are going to go there, more than likely, what we're seeing is some schools are already increasing their tuition to match whatever the aspect will be for the vouchers. So in that aspect, you're going to see schools who are losing funds to schools who are taking funds to still serve the highest level of students, where our students who really need that aren't getting those funds. And more importantly, with aspect with that is that those schools that receive that aren't going to receive the same type of stipulations in terms of testing and
Brother Grant, let me interject. So with the new situation coming up, would you say that more Black families need to coalesce together and gather those funds coming in and start their own little schools?
That would be interesting, and I would not disagree with it in theory. In theory, I do not disagree with it at all, at all. However, the one
That's
thing
my thinking of what needs to happen.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that in theory at all. My concern with it is that when we look at our public schools, when we look at charter schools, there's a high rate of failing public schools that just kind of start out. And I personally, I wouldn't know the particulars that go into starting a charter school and how that would be ran. So I don't want to say, yeah, this is something that we should go out and do and not have a plan to help support that. In theory, I definitely do suggest it. I do support it, but I also have to go back to that public school system that serves so many kids, and especially in the communities that are full of our students that look like us. Using those funds then and having those parents and those individuals who might have started other school to just be invested in the schools within their communities. I've worked in schools that have a high socioeconomic area and very low. And the one thing I can tell you, the biggest difference between those two are parent involvement. And if a parent is involved in those things, they can make a lot of things happen on that campus. I feel like I've taken too much time and I apologize.
It was an important point though, and it gets kind of to the heart of what we're talking about, DEI, yes, maybe that means, hey, we have to take our own as long as we have the money available, long as those vouchers are for us too. Maybe we could take that money and create our own curriculums. Brother Sedric, what's the best way to move forward? What's the best way to move forward in this new reality?
Don't forget about me, brother.
I never will, brother.
I'll be brief. We have to become we again. And that means that we have to have more dialogues, more discussions, more conversations like this to where we can get to the rooter, to the tutor. And then at the same time, we also have to have the hard data and the statistical information to make wise empirical decisions. And then we have to confront the reality that we're facing. We can try to dance it up. We can try to, romanticize it. We can try to mythologize what's going on. But there is an all-out intent agenda to take us back to the 19th century. It is what it is. And you and I might not like it. We might try to, euphemize it and make it a little bit more sanitized. But there is a strong contingency in this country to take back their country and to take it back in a way in which will put us on the proverbial back of the bus. And the statistical data purports that and supports that. When you have individuals talking about decimating Medicaid and Medicare, that's going to affect those that have the less wherewithal, the less economic resources. And then thinking about education, I mean, it just baffles me that this administration is going to, have such a reproach for education when we all know. You don't have to look at the data. We all know. All of us in this circle, in this diatribe, in this conversation, and discourse, are educated. And one of the reasons why we are is because of subsidies and entities that have helped, fortify us in this measure. I'm not saying all. I'm not trying to be presumptive. Some of you probably came from money, but I know I needed those Pell Grants. I know I needed those resources that provided and that I paid back. So I'm not asking for a handout. I'm asking that just as the Homestead Act, which greatly benefited, and Dr. King, as someone mentioned earlier, Dr. King talked about white landowners. White landowners were greatly benefited by those acts of the government that subsidized them in a real way. Even in Texas, when Stephen F. Austin, Moses Austin, brought the impresarios and the white settlers, when they were able to get acreage for 12 cents, and they were also able to get acreage for their black slaves, enslaved. They were able to get acres for them. What about those black freedmen that Granger had, talked about on Juneteenth? Where was their land? Where were their resources that they, as taxpayers, were able and should have been able and capable to receive? But the disenfranchisement of their experiences continued on into the era of peonage and continued on into, and I'll say this and I'll close. Let us not be confused and think that somehow in 1965, courtesy of some acts, that we were able to now have equity and equality. Unfortunately, many of the schools in not only Alabama, Tennessee, Texas, but even in Boston did not desegregate. No, you know what they did? They created special education. You know what they did? They bust, all right? And this so-called mythology of equity and we've somehow been able to integrate is delusionary. You can't integrate and you don't have the resources, you don't have the wherewithal, you don't have the disposal to do such. You can only do that, as Malcolm X said, when I am truly a diner. That means I have the resources, I have the wherewithal and the mechanisms at my disposal to truly be a diner and dine. So I'll close with this. Yes, we do have to have a seat at the table, but we also have to have what it takes to be a patron and what it takes to also be a part and parcel of this thing we call America, right? This corporation. So we have to have our own, and we have to be willing to work with our own, regardless of if I agree with everything you said. I don't want you to agree with everything I've said. I know I've said some things that may not be accurate, but we also must work together without reproach. So that we can learn and I can learn and we can learn together how to do this thing better. Because one thing is for sure, the mechanisms of this government are controlled almost by a hegemony of individuals who may not think like us and may not have our best interests at heart.
Most definitely, most definitely. We want a seat at the table, but we also want our own. That's what it comes down to. I believe, Dr. Cleo, your standpoint.
Yeah, so much. Thank you for letting me get a chance to get in there and get some words in. A couple things across the course of the conversation. One is that we have to be a self-determinant people. And how do we do that, right? We do that by, we need to take the best of both of our people. It's funny how these dichotomies get created, where it's you W. Du Bois or are you Booker T? Are you Malcolm X or are you Martin? Are you Biggie or are you Tupac? Like, we have to take the best of all of our people and use that to be self-determinant, because they all have something to contribute and offer. And so I always get concerned when I see that dichotomy kind of happen, where I think the other side benefits from that, seeing us squabble between, well, which leader are we going to follow? No, it's about, hey, what do they have to offer? What do we take the best from that and move forward to be a self-determined people? Another point, we were talking a little bit about the political parties in this country. People always wonder, like, well, wasn't the Republican Party, they were against slavery and now we think they're racist? Aren't they the good guys? Well, if you really want to know that transition, how that happened, check out a book by Michael Harriot called Black as Fuck History. Very great book. He does a great analysis of how the political parties change. And Mr. Graham kind of touched on it a little bit there about how that Southern strategy got involved in the 60s, where the parties end up kind of switching clothes, so to speak. So a very good analysis if you check that book out. He does a great job breaking that down. When we move forward as a people, we have to be self-determined, right? Because we can't rely on the government. We can't rely on the goodness of, we saw what happened by relying on the hope and goodness of good white people stepping up, right? What they end up doing is they went with their white fears. They were afraid of seeing a country led by a black female. When they see black females, you know what they think of? They think of the Cardi B's. They think of Sexy Red. And they said, we don't want that for our country, right? So that's why we even let a guy who's a convicted criminal, a sex offender, and someone take control, rule the country, as opposed to this black female who was eminently more qualified than he was. And that's what we're dealing with. And we can't allow the consciousness of good white people to get in our way of us being free and becoming self-determined. So that means we got to build our own institutions. That means building our own financial institutions, political institutions, and educational institutions. Because once we do that, then we get to control what happens in this country when we are able to move that way. And we do that by not being divided, but by taking the best of all that our people have to offer to be able to move forward.
I just want to say, guys, I'm willing to go as long as we are having a constructive conversation. We're not just going to keep it at an hour. We're going to, because we want to really get into the depth of this conversation. And our biggest thing in the Black community is we have learned to take some of their morals and habits and fight with each other. And more so, how can we work together? Why are we having an argument about Michael Jordan being greater than LeBron James? Hey, let's celebrate both of them being great. Both of W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T were great. We can't get so caught up, is one better than the other? I try to stay away from those conversations because they just only deal with ego and not with unity and not with working together. So that's my thing. And I think in this new anti-DEI era, if we find a way to work together, as we always have, we have overcome every type of attack against the Black community, and we should overcome this one also. Brother Warren, what do you say about the conversation so far? And isn't that the way? Finding a way to work together.
I don't mind working with anybody, even if I'm a Republican, and everybody know that's not a hidden thing. I don't mind working with you if you're a Democrat. But again, as I said earlier, we have to look at things in reality and not the way we want to see them. Well, Brother Cleo just said something that, if y'all saw me over here, I leaned back in my chair and fell over. He said that they didn't elect Kamala Harris because they didn't want to see a Black woman be the president. And I don't know how anybody could derive at that thought process. First of all, this woman never even considered herself Black until it was beneficial for her to run for the office of the president.
She was an AKA, brother. That's a Black
Excuse
sorority.
me?
She was an AKA at Howard.
Then in the AKA,
she went to a historically Black college.
She went to. I understand all of that. I know she went to Howard. She's an AKA, but
she embraced her blackness a long time ago.
That woman always, she always identified as Indian. She has never identified as Black until it became beneficial for her to run for office. That's when she began to identify as Black. She don't even have a Black husband. And then the things that she would do, Black folks should have been highly insulted on the things that she did to run for. You bringing Meg Thee Stallion out on stage to shake her behind. Is this how you supposed to get people to vote for you? She couldn't handle any kind of interviews. And we saying that the people was mad because she didn't hire a.
I believe it's true that the reason she was not elected is not because
that woman was not qualified.
Did identify as
she
Black.
Wasn't qualified. No, she wasn't.
That woman
qualified.
was eminently qualified, my brother.
Brother, see, this is why
she was a senator.
I would just say,
senator, attorney general,
brother. No way she was qualified.
She was a senator, attorney general.
Because she made it up there does not make her qualified because she was a senator and
she was way more qualified than her competitor.
Okay, bro.
I mean, Trump was if you listen to Stephen A. Smith, I believe what he has said is the real reason. Trump talked more like people talk, what's really in their heart. And like Charlemagne the God said, she's following the script or what she think people want to hear. That is why she did not get more traction. And the political election takes different levels and times. Barack Obama came at the right time for his message. However, at this time, that message may not have worked because the country is at a point where, hey, they want to take it back to the 1950s, where we had just finished the war, World War II, as well as we had dropped the bomb, feeling the most powerful, and whites had jobs everywhere. Everything was out there, and that's what they want to go back to. And that's what they want. And she wasn't presenting an image like that.
Let me get this straight.
Okay.
This country has went through 47 presidents, and I don't believe not one ran a campaign permitting hoism up on stage and things like that, especially trying to get the black vote. And we say this woman is qualified. She sit up, she couldn't even answer a decent question every time. She's laughing like she's on something. And what was she qualified at?
Well, you can't just talk negatively about the other person and, that'll make everybody like you. That's never been a strategy, to just talk negatively about the other person. And
all she had to do was stick with the politics.
What again are the ways forward? I heard what you say. How do we get there?
We got to get out of this, nonsense of, trying to choose a gang affiliation or political, party, because neither of these parties truly benefit us. I mean, we can amalgamate ourselves, we can, be like a square peg going into a round circle if we want to. But ultimately, we have to come together with a real agenda and a real political oversight, so that we can use hindsight as it's meant and described to be. It's not meant to try to theorize and figure out who was this and that and the third. No, it's meant to best support ourselves so that we can perpetuate ourselves into the future effectively. All of us have children. All of us have descendants and offspring. And, for us to sit and argue about things that don't really bring about change for us is quite disastrous and derelict, in my opinion. And again, it makes for good, political banter and theater and things of that nature. But the reality of it is, all of us on the 1st and 15th, we're going to have to pay some bills, and the political forethought and insight that I really believe that we have to have is, how are we going to survive in a capitalistic society that is continuing to grow ever more avarice, ever more capitalistic, ever more privatized, ever more focused on making sure that the haves have and the have-nots better find a way to have, or they will no longer have life.
Most definitely. Brother Baruti, can I finish my statement? Because I didn't get a chance to finish my statement.
Oh, okay, brother.
On that. We can't have it both ways. Martin Luther King said he had a dream that his children would one day grow up in a society where we would be judged not by the color of the skin, but of the content of their character. In my position, from where I stand, DEI is a good position of getting rid of it so we can do that. We stay so focused on the race. How can we ever rise above it? And it's us that stay focused on this conversation at all times. Everything they do is against us. Everything they do is always to try to destroy. I mean, if they wanted us to destroy, we've been destroyed a long time ago. This is just common sense. When I was a child, I thought as a child. Paul said, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. Why don't we just stop being Black Americans and white Americans, and let's just be Americans?
I just want to say, again, both things can be true. It's not just one way or the other. I mean, the world is great. Ecclesiastes says, hey, you have to do both things at the same time. And so the gray area as complex human beings is what we got to think about. I mean, coming from this day today, I mean, talking about what we can do. Hey, if we put together an investment club, that's doing something that can build some future. We put together a real estate club, that's doing something. Let's build our circles, our associations. Yes, but that doesn't take away from having the conversations about things being done to us or have been done in the past. So that's what I'm saying. We got to do both things.
Yeah, can I interject, because I wasn't finished saying what I was saying as well. But
yeah, me neither.
All I'm gonna say is I respect every individual that has a perspective, and is some very esteemed and scholarly brothers in this mix. But I think that it's important for us to understand that as much as we pontificate and signify, at the end of the day, we have to survive, and we have to figure out what best is going to keep us thriving and moving forward in this society. And it is dangerous, and I'm gonna speak directly to Brother Warren. It is dangerous to say that why can't we just live in a so-called colorblind society? Because color has been at the forefront of every damn thing in this country. You can't dissuade that, Warren. You know that.
You are misunderstanding my
No, I'm
statement.
not. And
You misunderstanding my statement.
if I
Go
am,
ahead.
I will apologize to you. You know that. But I am saying we cannot even remotely get close to prescribing a prescription for our people to lose our identity and essence. Our historical
Who said
reference is
anything about
important.
losing it?
I'm not saying that, but I am saying that we cannot even remotely get close to putting out a premise or a theory or a thought process that would make something like that even seem applicable, because of the uniqueness of our struggle and the profundity and profoundness of it. I'll say this in close. I think it is extremely important, and it's apropos for all of us to, whether we're Republican, whether we're Democrat, to be centered in our whatever we describe ourselves to be. I think our identity is important. And while Dr. King did say the content of our character, he did also say, I'm Black. And he was very aware of that Blackness. And upon his death, he had made some stances against the American empire, such as being opposed to Vietnam War, because of the fact that so many young Black men who had been disenfranchised by the American system were going to be sent to the Viet Cong to be killed. He stood against that. And he stood against many of the capitalistic practices in this country. So if you're going to quote King, quote him correctly and fully, and understand that he also was speaking against, even when he said, I have a dream, I'm here for a check that has been bounced with insufficient funds. And I think it's important for us to always focus on what we have been taken, all right, what has been, if you will, hoodwinked and bamboozled from us. And we need to start there so that that restitution is done. And then we can move forward with all this wonderful and beautiful things that you brothers are sharing. And I hope that one day will come true.
Okay, let me go back on that. Again, America is a country built on an idea. Most countries, when you come into their country, the country is based on ethnicity, it's based on culture. All of the people have something in common because they're pretty much related. But America is a country built on a total different concept. It's an idea, and that idea is that democratic republic. That idea is capitalism. What you do with your people, that's why I say we have the creativeness to do whatever we do in our community with our people, we have that right. But when I say why can't we just stop being white Americans and Black Americans, when we come to the table, if you go sit at my table, there's no way I'm gonna invite you in my house, feed you my food, and you sit at my table and disrespect me, and you gonna sit there and eat my food. That's not gonna happen. But this is what we do. We come to the table very disrespectful, and then we're looking for something to change, and then wonder why it won't change. You're disrespectful. So when you come to the table, let's put all that black, white stuff aside and deal with the concept of America as the idea it is. Now, when you go back to your community, if you want to go back to your cultural, your ethnicity, or whatever it is you do in your community, you do that. The Chinese come, they got stuff set up all over the city. It ain't a major city in the United States. You don't go to, they got words in China. You can't even pronounce the street name. But when it comes to the democratic or republic process that you want to mention, they are fully involved, fully engaged, not talking about neither party benefits us. They're not talking that kind of stuff. They're engaged in it as Americans. Even Africans come over here and you ask them, what's your name? Robert Jones. You know he from Africa. His name ain't no Robert Jones, but he has enough sense to know that I need to get into this system and operate in this system if I'm going to win in this system. We are the ones that keep fighting, pointing the finger, scratching our behind, showing our behind to them, and then wonder why we can't get nothing done.
I just say,
Yeah,
our
you know,
situation
just
as Black folks who were enslaved in this country is unique, and because of our singular skin color, we can stand out in a way that is unique, and they can see that. Now, that doesn't take away from we have to be self-reliant and depend on ourselves, but we have to pay attention to our history because it did affect who we became, who we are, and we can do both things. Brother Thomas Graham, again, what are the best ways to move forward?
You know, I really wanted to address a few things from Brother Houston, but in essence of moving the conversation along, I'll focus on the actual question prompt that you just had. What are the best ways to move forward? I think one of the most formal ways that we can move forward are having discussions like this. I think is I mean, abundantly clear that of the four gentlemen you have on this panel, three of us seem to have a disagreement with Brother Houston, but we're not referring to Brother Houston as anything other than Brother Houston because he's still a brother. And ultimately, I think we still have the same type of goal, is that we want to see a fulfillment and an empowerment and increase in our people. Now, how we go about doing that may be different. If I was going to go to the Reliance Center for a game, and you were going, and Brother Houston was going, it's not that just my direction is the only direction to get there, because you're coming from somewhere else, and Brother Houston might be coming from somewhere else. So the path that I'm seeing that to get there is not going to be the same as yours, and it's not going to be the same as his. And I can't tell you that if you get on 610 and then head west and get off on Kirby or whatnot, that's not the right direction, because it might be the right direction for me, but maybe not so for you. This is the same aspect with that. I think I have a different level of understanding based off my background and based off the fact that I work with kids every day. And it becomes frustrating to see a lot of times the disproportionate levels of Black kids who are in special ed, who have discipline issues and those type of things. But I never lose sight of the fact that nothing just happens overnight. And we can't just act as though the things of the past don't affect our future. However, we cannot continue to just simply state this happened in the past and this is where I am now and this is where I'm going to stay. And that's the part I agree with me, Brother Houston. We can't stay there, but I completely disagree with not understanding and acknowledging that this is something that led to it. Give a quick analogy about that. If you go to the doctor and the doctor says, hey, your cholesterol is like super high, or you have a heart condition or whatnot, he's not going to just say, this is, you just had this heart condition. He's going to ask me, tell me about your family history. Tell me about your medical history, because Tell me about your eating habits in the past. Tell me about what you've done to your body leading up to this point, because what has been done affects where you are right now. But having that knowledge of that and then changing that aspect is different. I'll end on this note, and I wanted to kind of interject, but I didn't want to interrupt the brother when he was speaking. I would say the biggest difference, and there are so many different things that I could point out as issues with uh, Vice President Harris um, in terms of a presidential leader. And, so I'm not going to carry water for her in that regard. And the one thing I will agree with is that, having someone come up and twerk on stage for a presidential campaign is not the type of person that I would want representing me as a United States citizen. However, having an insult roast comic at a benefit is not what I want as a president representing me either. Having someone that when he's campaigning openly telling people, yeah, punch somebody in the face and I'm gonna pay your legal bills is not someone that I would want representing me. Having an individual who openly tries to bribe and tell someone, give me extra votes so I can become this president is someone that I wouldn't want voting for me. Having someone that no matter what anyone might say, it openly help perpetuate the overtaking of the U.S. government during the peaceful transition that we had, and he had a part in facilitating that is something that I would want, because anyone who has had a history of tweeting throughout his entire presidency, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, sending tweets all day. But as soon as this stuff happens, you wait 45 minutes before tweeting anything. That you can tell me what you will want to see with that. However, the history of that, seeing all of those things speak to the fact that Kamala was not the best candidate for that I would want representing me, but she was damn sure way better than who we have right now, in my opinion.
But I think we have to get away from looking for perfect candidates and look for who's the best candidate in that moment. And I think people get caught up. Yeah, I didn't like Megan Thee Stallion. If I was running for president, I wouldn't have Megan Thee Stallion on my stage. But am I going to let that keep me from voting for somebody who I know will make sure that our grandmothers who need insulin at $35 can still get that? To make sure that financial aid and debt relief still happens for our families, to make sure that there's equity and access for our kids in our schools, in our society. Like, I'm not gonna let Megan Thee Stallion get in the way of that right there. Also, I just want to say, you asked about what we can do to get things right. What we got to do right now is it's got to be a hyper focus on blackness, no matter what side of the aisle we on, where we stand, what colors we wear in our fraternities, sororities. It has to be a hyper focus on what's best for black people, and we have to leverage that to affect policy change in this country. If we're not affecting policy, we're not doing anything. Everybody, we got to affect policy, because policy dictates what happens with laws. It dictates where money goes. It dictates where resources go. So we got to get hyper focused on blackness and seeing how can we leverage that to affect policy change. And that has to start on the state, federal, and local level. So I want everybody to get engaged in local politics, become a precinct chair, get involved, whatever side of the aisle you're on, get involved, everybody. Get involved locally, state, and federal level. That's what we need.
Let me say this real quick. We are toward the end of our show. However, we're going to continue as long as you all want to continue, but let's make our final summations and share anything you want to share, and we're going to continue. But in our continuing, make your final summation. Brother Sedric.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate being on the panel with just an amazing assemblage of brothers, and I appreciate the conversation. And I love you, Brother Warren. Whether or not I agree doesn't matter. You're my brother, and I appreciate you, and I'm thankful for your thought process. And I want you to hold those Republicans accountable, brother, just like we're gonna hold them accountable too. But I do want to say this, and this is this is so important to me, so apropos. We know we're hurting right now, if we're being honest. We lost Sister Sheila Jackson Lee last year. And regardless of the political perspective or whatever the case may be, you never want to see a good sister transition, especially when, I had spoken with her just weeks before. She was planning on doing a whole lot of things. And I was just so surprised yesterday when we saw good brother Sylvester Turner, regardless of how you feel about his political or even his personage. 70 is just too young. It's just too young to go. And I really want to, plead, Johnny Gill, Keith Sweat, beg every brother out there, please take care of your health. Please make sure that you're doing everything in your power to stay here. I've seen reports, and I can go through the statistical data. Some say 69 and a half, some say 70. I've even seen them as low as 64. I just know Black men need to be here as long as we can be on this planet, because the planet is just better with us, in my opinion. So I think that we have to take care of our health, and we have to make sure that our mental health and our mental stability is where it needs to be, so we can function effectively to do all the things that we've mentioned in this conversation. Because without our health, we're of no wealth to anyone or anything, especially ourselves. So we have a mental health and male health conference coming up March 16th. And I'll be sharing more information on my page, Sedric Keeler, and other pages as well, because we need to make sure in the city of Houston and other cities abroad that we have these kind of conferences, that we look at our blood pressure, that we look at our food intake, that we look at the level of exercise that we're participating in. Because, brothers, and I'll say this in close, I think that it is insanity to have as much knowledge and wisdom as we have about the political realm, about the social realm, about society in general. And we don't understand what we need to be putting in our bodies in terms of food and drink. And we don't understand how effective meditation, rumination, and prayer is to make sure that our bodies is a temple. We say that. I see most of the religious folk and spiritual folk out there saying our body is a temple. But I rarely see temples get filled with graffiti and garbage and junk, like we do when we, pick up our fork and our spoon and we take a cup to our lips. So I'm hoping, I'm praying that each one of us on this particular show and everyone watching this show will do what is best and take care of ourselves, because they say that's the first law of nature, self-preservation.
I just want to say, piggybacking on what Brother Sedric said, hey, mental health is so important. It's been a deep part of my life as far as working with my family and different ones. And to that end, I have a mental health show, Minding Our Mental Wellness, which comes on once a month on Sundays. My next show is on March 30th, and it's facilitated by myself and professional counselor Jennifer Kane. Also, I do a sports show also, so I just wanted to mention that. But we are at the end of our show, but brother Dr. Cleo, please go in depth as to what you would like to share to end, and then tell people how they could talk to you if they want to talk to you.
Yeah, first of all, just grateful to be in this space, man. Just
do you have any more light in your background?
I'll try to do that.
Okay.
I'll go real fast on my last
Okay.
two here.
Well,
Is that
talk deeply about what you want to say.
yeah, just grateful. Yeah, thank you, brother. Just grateful to be in this space, especially when there's, opposing point of views, because I think you have to hash those things out to get to the best solutions. If everybody in the room always agrees, the best ideas never come up to be executed. So definitely appreciate that discourse. I've been in education for 30 years, and one thing that I've learned is that for us as a people, we have to look at Black people through not a deficit lens, but a lens of empowerment. I think as a people, we're unique people, because I think that we've come through so much and we're not where we want to be. But I think there's a lot of other societies and people that if they would have gone through what we've gone through, they wouldn't be nearly where we are right now. So I love where we are as a people. We can be better. And I think by us coming together and uniting around the idea of our Blackness and connecting on a level of a shared culture and vision and greatness for our people, understanding our history, taking power from that to move forward to create institutions that take care of our young people. Because in my career field, I see our young people, they really need us to be together on this, y'all. Our young people really need us to be together and start building institutions for the future. And so reach out to me, Dr. Cleo, drcleo.com. If you want to get my website, I would love to come and do some educational consultancy for your school, develop some leadership and help you reduce disproportionality also in your schools and in your districts. Thank you.
Well, thank you, brother, as always. Thank you, brother. Brother Thomas Graham, your final word, and how can we again move forward, as well as what inspiration can our brothers and sisters get to survive?
Much like Brother Wadley, this is my 25th year working in education, and I've seen a lot of the same things that he has working in the public field. And I completely agree in the aspect that we need to approach everything, especially our people, as from the empowerment point of view, and not that deficit point of view. But it also goes into having these conversations with individuals whom we might not agree with on a number of different things. But I know that coming together somewhere, we'll meet somewhere in the middle. And that's where we can actually find our success and find ways to actually come together and have that collaboration to move forward with where we need to as a people. I'm very excited and very happy. This is the first time I've had the opportunity to participate in a panel like this. So being able to sit down and have just deep conversation and converse with you brothers on this matter, it's been fulfilling for me. And I think that if we have more opportunities to move in that direction, that would be helpful. But also understanding from the political point of view, I like the quote, I'm not sure who says it, that there are no permanent friends or there are no permanent enemies. Well, we need to not be, our vote should not go exclusively to one particular party. Our vote should be with whomever is going to serve our best interests. And if it's Republicans at the time who are serving our best interests, and in my opinion, they're not right now, then that's who we need to go with. If the Democrats that have, at least in my lifetime, have more of a history of serving our best interests, but not to say that's what we're seeing right now or that they could do better, then that's what we're going to go with. If it's independents, it's the Green Party, I don't care who it is, but what we do need to do is just understand that we don't have the luxury of being dedicated to anyone but ourselves at this point in this country. And, brother Houston had mentioned, he said, I want us all to consider ourselves Americans. I'll be ready just to consider myself just straight American when the reality of the situation that he is mentioned before allows me to consider myself nothing but an American. But the reality of the situation that I live in today and that I've raised my two sons in are that we are Black Americans. And as long as that is the reality that we're living in, that's the reality that I'm operating in. I thank you, brother, so much for being able to just share and have this opportunity to converse with you all. And I wish you all, God bless you all.
Are you available on Facebook or some way somebody could reach you if they want to?
You know what? I might have to get something started, but I have a Twitter account on X, and I think it's at T_Graham. I'm not a big influencer, use a lot of social media, but
well, if somebody reaches to me and wants to talk to you, I'll touch base with Dr. Wadley, and
that's great.
He'll get in touch with you.
That's fine.
All right, Brother Warren, you've heard a lot tonight. It's been a very positive conversation and very perspective-filled conversation. What would you like to share as we get ready to close out?
There's a particular passage of scripture in the Bible that says, so a man thinketh, so it is with him. So it's not with everybody else. It's with that person that they're thinking in their thought process as to how they operate. But what I would like all your listeners to do is to study history, study American history, and get a thorough understanding as to what happened from both sides. I want you to read it from both sides, different point of views, and get a thorough understanding of what happened in this country and how we have derived to where we are today. For the majority of this country has had a two-tiered party system that is Republican and Democrat. Any other party that comes along is not going to make it, or either just to interfere with the votes that's between the two. That's basically what happens with that. And we have to decide what it is that we want. Do we want to be slaves, or do we want to be free? Now, if you understand the history of this country and you understand the parties, the Republican Party has always been about small government and allowing the people to make their way, whether they stumble, fail, or fall, giving the people that option and opportunity to do so. The Democrats have always been about big government and control. So either you want small government and you want the power to decide for yourself, or you want big government and you want the government taking over and handling your business from every aspect. And in thinking about that, I remember I grew up in the Fifth Ward. And I can remember even as a child sitting back watching these things that I saw and things that I was around anyway. But older guys, they look at a young girl and decide they want her. They strategize in their mind, how do I get her? Well, the first thing they would do, they would offer her something, whether it's some money or something. And she may turn it down a few times, but after a while, that need is going to be there and kick in, and she's going to accept it. And then he does this on a regular basis in a cycle. So now she's become dependent upon that. Once she becomes dependent upon that, then he snatches it back. So once he snatches it back, he has her in his grasp. Anytime you are depending on the government, and of course, like one brother said tonight about there must be some form of socialism, and I do agree, because the Republican Party is like the father, and the Democratic Party is like the mother. This the nurturer. The father is the disciplinarian. Nobody likes the daddy. Nobody likes the disciplinarian who's going to tell you to get up off your behind and do it yourself. Everybody wants to go to the mother and be nurtured and say, oh, baby, it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. So we look for that. But at the end of the day, when you may fall behind where you need some help or you need some social programs. But when you have 2, 3, and 4 generations of people on those social programs and welfare, something has failed somewhere. Something has went wrong somewhere. And in closing, as my famous godfather soul, the late James Brown said, I don't need nobody to give me nothing. Open up the door and I get it myself. Thank you for having me on the show.
All right. Well, thank you, brother. You want to share how somebody can reach you?
Well, I mean, right now, we're putting some things in the work, and I know y'all been hearing me say that for the longest. I'm just slow moving about it, coming back. But you can reach me on Facebook, Warren Houston. I'm there, and we can go from there. And, let me add this one more quote, because I know it's something. I talked about Booker T. Washington. There was another quote from him, which basically coincides with what I just said. This is another quote that he said back then. He said, among a large class, there seemed to be a dependence upon the government for every conceivable thing. The members of this class had little ambition to create a position for themselves, but wanted the federal officials to create one for them. How many times I wished then and have often wished since that by some power of magic, I might remove the great bulk of these people into the country districts and plant them up on the soil, up on the solid and never deceptive foundation of Mother Nature, where all nations and races that have ever succeeded have gotten their start. A start that at first may be slow and toilsome, but one that nevertheless is real.
Take a man to the water and he can get his own fish. If you give it to him, he won't learn how to fish. I agree. There are some that you do need to help them a little bit more, though. And I believe you still need to do both ways. And that is my firm statement on that. Just like you had Booker T. Washington, you did have W.E.B. Du Bois at the same time. And if they could have worked together, that would have been the best case scenario. Brother Sedric, your final word, my brother. Brother Sedric, you are on mute. You're on mute. Let me try to tell it.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, just real
Okay.
quick, let's love on each other, man. And let's love on each other, and let's continue to remember the rich history that we all come from. I would ask tonight, call upon your ancestors. Remember that a great aunt that you had. Remember your grandfather. Remember, someone in your family. Maybe you had a cousin that's transitioned. Remember them, and reflect back on the connection that you had, the memories, the epigenetics that we talk about sometimes, about how important and how potent that information is. I'll say this: we have had numerous people transition in our lives over the last few years. And I think many of us have almost become numb to it, to the point to where we don't even think about the value and the importance of the present. And we all know a present is a gift. And we need to take full advantage of this gift called life. So let's not stress out. Let's remember to love on each other and love on ourselves and spread love. Because I heard the great Marvin Gaye say, war is not the answer, because only love can conquer hate.
Yes, brother. You want to share how people can reach you?
They can just go on Facebook at Sedric Keeler. And they can go on Conscious Mindset, punch in Conscious Mindset, and you'll find what you need.
I just want to say this. You talked about our ancestors. My father, the Honorable Raymond Alexander, who a state day is named after, September 21st, because he was on the State Board of Education. And he's the one that introduced no pass, no play. A lot of people didn't like him for that, but he wanted to push education. And that rule is still there today. And I'm a product of him. When he was here, I did not understand, but I understand a whole lot more. And I'm so gratified. He lived to 91. And then my mama, who lived to 96, just past December 20th. I'm a product of their love. And I want to share that love, starting with my circle, my kids, and then branch it out like a light stand, and branch it out as much as I can. And that's what I try to do with these shows. And I'm going to keep doing them, and I'm going to keep trying to spread information and knowledge and ways. And I'm going to keep trying to build my circle and connect with other circles. So I appreciate everybody. And anybody got a hot last statement? Brother Graham, thank you very much. Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Thank you. I enjoyed being here.
Brother Sedric, always. Thank you, brother.
Much love. Much love. Take care.
As you know, Dr. Wadley, thank you. Everybody, take care. We'll see you next time.
See you next time, gentlemen.